I tell you, I'm never lucky at gambling, you know. I was in a game show. I won a 20-day cruise in the Bermuda Triangle. I tell you, I don't get a break with nothing. I joined Gamblers Anonymous. They gave me 2 to 1. I don't make it. Oh, boy, the other night in Las Vegas, I tell you, I got loaded. I don't know what I'm doing. I played dice. I lost $1,000. I got even, though. I stole 400 sweet and lows. This afternoon, my wife started in again. Yeah, she keeps throwing up when I work Las Vegas. I went broke playing the slot machines, you know. I'll tell you, Las Vegas, I got slot machines all over, even in supermarkets. I went in to buy a container of milk, cost me $238. Now, with gambling, I'm never lucky. Well, last week at a track, I shut off the opening gun and they killed my horse. Look, I mean, I'm getting old. I'm not a kid anymore. I know I'm getting old. In Vegas, I played a slot machine. 3 prunes came up. I mean, people look at me, they figure I'm the type of guy I get drunk and go to the track, right? They're wrong. I get high first. I get drunk and go to the track. You know what I mean?
Good morning. It's Wednesday, June the 21st, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have The Rape of the Mind, No Free Lunch, SEAL Team 6, and Fox News versus ABC News on the Hunter Biden plea deal. You decide. All that and more when I get back. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing and remove your hats for the national anthem of the United States of America.
Thank you. And now there's no free lunch. 250 Economic Truths by David-Bahnsen.
In every age, everybody knows that up to his own time, progressive improvement has been taking place. Nobody seems to reckon on any improvement in the next generation. We cannot absolutely prove that those are in error who say society has reached a turning point, that we have seen our best days. But so said all who came before us, and with just as much apparent reason. On what principle is it that with nothing but improvement behind us, we are to expect nothing but deterioration before us? Thomas Babington Macaulay. Those who bemoan the future conditions of despair that free enterprise are sure to produce environmentally, socially, morally, boldly do so against the testimony of history and common sense.
And that was There's No Free Lunch by David-Bahnsen. Back in a minute. Thank you. Who is the true conservative? He knows that the government has no rights. He is religious. He is patriotic and uses common sense. He makes judgments, refuses to speculate, speaks clearly and definitively, and is not afraid to say no. He's open-minded, asking why rather than why not. He is consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of his existence, unafraid to learn or correct his mistakes. He is a normal American. Back in a minute. Thank you. What are the true conservative suggested federal political priorities? Number 1, recognize that the government has no rights. 2, defund Planned Parenthood. 3, replace the Affordable Care Act. 4, institute zero-based budgeting. 5, prohibit collective bargaining for all public employees. 6, assign criminal and civil liabilities to all government regulators. 7, immediately repeal the Patriot Act. 8, immediately repeal all emergency dictator laws. 9, reinstate writs of outlawry. 10, use taxpayer funds to sponsor recalls, ballot initiatives, and referendums. 11, create a flexible minimum wage. 12, means test health care. 13, immediately and permanently prohibit investment banking by any office holder. And 14, make nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons obsolete. Back in a minute. Thank you. What are the true conservative cultural priorities? Bring back hierarchy. Bring back the admiration of intelligence, morality, and beauty. Bring back single-income households. Integration. Parenting, the primacy of existence, certainty of knowledge, and universal rights and wrongs. Bring back principled behavior, masculinity and femininity. Bring back Adam 12, John F. Kennedy, the gold standard, pre-HMO medical care, and nonprofit news. Bring back civil service, the term stupid question, arguments and fights, the cultural influence of the church, and the Boy Scouts. Bring back the influence of social organizations such as the Lions Club and the Rotary Club. Bring back bowling. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the rape of the mind.
Discipline and morale. While good morale implies inner strength and self-discipline, it may not necessarily imply a set group discipline in a political or military sense. Good personal morale and backbone were two of the needed qualifications for taking part successively in the underground during the last war. The partisans, working secretly, now here, now there, relied in their lonely combat on their individual initiative and morale as much as, if not more than, on distant leadership and discipline. This is just the opposite of a kind of standby morale impelled by blind fear and maintained from a distance, the kind which is obtained in jails or concentration camps, or in a tribe with extreme emphasis on common participation. In the first groups, there was morale without discipline. In the second, discipline without morale. In the same way, there are some officers who can only develop discipline without morale. Nevertheless, there is usually an interrelation between discipline and morale. Only when a certain amount of initial disciplinary training is given to youngsters or soldiers are they well conditioned for that personal inner strength which is based on self-confidence and trust in the group as a whole, together with confidence in the authorities. Emergency discipline is resorted to during times of stress when there is usually lack of time, with the result that there is not a sufficient period for self-control and adjustment to the group. Only a self-chosen discipline which develops gradually can lay the basis for inner freedom and morale. This rule has been forgotten by many educators. Only this basis of initial, well-conditioned patterns gives us the confidence to stand on our own. We all start by introjecting and taking over our morale from others, our parents and educators. The basis of our personal morale is what we internalize from them. The subtle mutual relation between discipline and freedom starts in the cradle under the care of loving and interested and consistent parents. The parents are the first to build morale. The conflict between discipline and morale in a group usually arises when the members are held together by a compulsion or necessity. Here, the inner coherence will be completely different from that of a situation in which there is a spontaneous loyalty to the group. The aim of all discipline is to develop a better adjustment to the group. In turn, success in identifying with the group develops a stronger ego. From this point on, freedom begins. A further understanding of these morale-building principles is important for an evaluation of the inner strength or vulnerability of the various cultural groups. We may expect, according to our experiences in psychotherapy, that where too much discipline or even slavery prevails, the inner cohesion of the group will be very different from that of a group respecting and holding the individual in high esteem. Yet we have found men, even in the armies of totalitarian systems, who exemplify high morale. I call to mind those Japanese soldiers who, without any tie to the mother country, stuck to their lonely posts for years after the war, as though the emperor and his generals were still looking at them. This tells us something about the consistent love, security, and dedication they received in the first 6 years of life.
And that was Discipline and Morale from The Rape of the Mind. Back in a minute. Thank you. So we're going to have a you decide on the Hunter Biden plea deal. It's going to be ABC News versus Fox. So first up, ABC News.
Now to Hunter Biden reaching a settlement with the Justice Department. It comes after a wide-ranging 5-year investigation led by a Trump-appointed prosecutor. President Biden's son set to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax charges and to settle a felony gun charge without prosecution. The White House saying the president and first lady love their son and support him as he continues to rebuild his life. But Republicans are calling it a sweetheart deal and vowing to continue their investigations in Congress. ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas at the DOJ tonight.
After a 5-year investigation, the Justice Department announcing today that prosecutors have cut a deal with President Biden's son, Hunter. He will plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax charges and acknowledge he illegally bought a gun at a time he was addicted to crack cocaine. Hunter Biden has long proclaimed his innocence.
I am absolutely certain, 100% certain, that at the end of the investigation, that I will be cleared of any wrongdoing.
But today, a different tune. His attorney saying Biden believes it's important to take responsibility for these mistakes he made during a period of turmoil and addiction in his life. He now admits he didn't pay $100,000 in taxes for each of 2 years, money he's since paid back. As part of the plea deal, he will likely avoid jail time. Prosecutors expected to instead recommend probation with conditions, likely calling for him to remain drug-free for 2 years and banning him from owning a gun again. The man in charge of the investigation, U.S. Attorney David Weiss, was appointed by former President Donald Trump and kept on by Attorney General Merrick Garland to show he would not meddle in the case.
There will not be interference of any political or improper kind.
Weiss said he was granted ultimate authority over this matter, including responsibility for deciding where, when, and whether to file charges. His long and wide-ranging investigation examined various parts of Hunter Biden's life, including his business dealings in Ukraine and China. Through it all, the president unwavering in his support for his son.
My son's done nothing wrong. I trust him. I have faith in him.
Today, the White House releasing this statement. The president and first lady love their son and support him as he continues to rebuild his life. We will have no further comment. But late this afternoon,
I'm very proud of my son.
Republicans had plenty to say.
If you are the president's son, you get a sweetheart deal.
Republican presidential candidate Florida Governor Ron DeSantis echoing those words, and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley decrying a, quote, double standard of justice in our federal government. As for former President Trump, who himself is facing trial on federal charges, attacked Hunter Biden's plea deal as a mere traffic ticket, adding, our system is broken.
Pierre Thomas joining us now, and Pierre, Hunter Biden's attorneys believe this case is settled, but the Justice Department today is saying the investigation is still ongoing. Walk us through what that actually means.
We have no indication that Hunter Biden is still under active DOJ investigation. His attorneys are adamant. They say this is it, that after 5 years of digging into Hunter Biden's life, these are all the charges prosecutors could bring. Now we all have to wait for a judge to be assigned to the case and to see if the deal will be approved. Whit?
Pierre Thomas with those developments today. Thank you. Let's bring in ABC's chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, traveling with the president in California. And Mary, the White House is insisting they had no role in Hunter Biden's case.
Whit, the White House has been trying to keep its distance from all of this, stressing that the president has never discussed this investigation with the attorney general. But the president is not distancing himself from his son. Biden has always said that he thinks Hunter did nothing wrong, that he trusts him and supports him. Tonight, it is clear that the White House is eager to turn the page on this chapter. And it is notable that there's nothing in this agreement that substantiates what Republicans have been focused on. They are not bringing any charges linked to Hunter Biden's overseas business dealings. But Whit, tonight it is also clear that Republicans are not going to give up this fight.
Okay, that was ABC News, and now Fox.
Hunter Biden reaching a plea deal with federal prosecutors over tax and gun charges as House Republicans warn it won't derail their investigations into the Biden family. Oversight Committee Chair James Comer is vowing now to push forward with his investigation into Hunter's business deals as the House Judiciary Committee plans its own set of hearings looking at Hunter. And as part of this agreement, Hunter will plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor counts of failing to pay his income tax. He will also admit to separate felony firearm offenses, and Hunter faces fines of up to $25,000. He also agreed to a pretrial diversion agreement for the gun charge, which I assume is like a pretrial intervention. He allegedly lied on a gun form in 2018, saying that he was not a user or he was not addicted. And remember, he also was discharged from the Navy in 2014 for testing positive to cocaine. And then probation for tax violations and unlikely to serve any time in prison, I guess because of who he is. Anyone else charged with these type of gun charges usually serves time behind bars. But let's walk over here. We have Matt Whitaker with us, the former acting attorney general. Good morning to you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Most people who are facing these types of charges, like I understand the tax charges. He didn't pay $100,000 in 2017, $100,000 in 2018. He paid it. That's over and done with. But the gun charges, when you hear of these rappers like Kodak Black, who lied on his form and had to spend time behind bars, and then you look at Hunter Biden, is it because of his last name?
I think it has to be. I was 5.5 years as a U.S. attorney, and we put people in jail for this crime. And, the ATF has a zero-tolerance policy. The DOJ and Joe Biden have been trying to reduce gun violence by cracking down on felons in possession, by drug dealers in possession, and even, form mistakes by FFLs, which are the firearm licensed firearms dealers. And so, as I look at this case, we now appears to have a royal family where, the king and the children of the king and the princess can do whatever they want, while the rest of America, including poor black children, can't commit these types of crimes and avoid prison. It's an exceptional deal.
Right. His attorney was talking about fairness. Listen to this.
The prosecutors are not asking for jail time. Are you concerned that the judge here might freelance?
I think, look, there are documents that haven't been publicly released yet. I think people have reported what the prosecutors are asking for. I think the judge is going to do what's fair. And I think what's fair is, my client gets on with his life.
A judge still has to accept this plea deal, right? Will that happen?
Yeah, and if I'm the judge, I would say this is an extraordinary deal. This judge has probably never seen a deal that's so lenient on a defendant for these types of charges.
Even though he's clean now.
Well, then that's, we should all celebrate that. Mm-hmm. But, all of us, because our founding fathers didn't create a royal family, they created citizens, all of us should have equal justice under the law. And we shouldn't have a case like Hunter Biden that's so exceptional. So I expect the judge will have a lot of questions.
Well, no matter what the judge says, can his dad pardon him?
Of course, the president's pardon power is absolute under the Constitution, but obviously the optics of all this, they want it to look like Hunter Biden is paying a price, but he doesn't have to go to jail.
Right. Okay, well, this Florida judge has set a trial date for the Trump classified document case for August 14th. Many were speculating that date would be pushed back because they wanted to wait till maybe after the election. Are you surprised?
This is the first trial calendar setting, and so it's going to be within the speedy trial window. So this is about as late as she could have set it, and comply with the Constitution and the laws. Now, I expect that the Trump team will ask for an extension and will be granted because, as you know, it's bumping right up against the primary calendar, including the first debate that Fox News is having.
Right. Will he be able to keep bumping it until after the election?
I think they will give a date that they think they can get prepared, considering that the president has the campaign running. So I would expect, in my experience, that it probably will go well beyond August, maybe even into 2024 or 2025.
Okay, so now you've heard ABC News and Fox News on the plea deal by Hunter Biden, between Hunter Biden and the Department of Justice. You decide. Back in a minute. Thank you. So now, new book and a little bit of a new format for this podcast. So every day is going to be a different day. Medal of Honor Monday, Tuesday is Ayn Rand Tuesday, and Wednesdays are going to be Wasdin Wednesday for the name of the author, which is Howard-Wasdin. He wrote a book called SEAL Team 6, and it's an account of his the memoirs of an elite Navy SEAL sniper. So every Wednesday we're going to be playing a chapter out of his book. So a chapter from Ayn Rand on Tuesday, Medal of Honor Monday. Tomorrow there's another new book, and it's going to be Inside Delta Force, written by Command Sergeant Major Haney, who is one of the original members of Delta Force. And so he wrote a book, memoirs also, about being in the Delta Force. So, and that will be then Haney Thursdays or Delta Force Thursday. I haven't decided which way I'm going to go with that. But so right now, though, it's going to be Chapter 1 of SEAL Team 6, Memoirs of an Elite Navy Sniper.
1. Reach out and touch someone. When the U.S. Navy sends their elite, they send the SEALs. When the SEALs send their elite, they send SEAL Team 6, the Navy's equivalent to the Army's Delta Force, tasked with counterterrorism and counterinsurgency, occasionally working with the CIA. This is the first time a SEAL Team 6 sniper's story has been exposed. My story. Snipers avoid exposure. Although we prefer to act rather than be acted upon, some forces are beyond our control. We rely on our strengths to exploit the enemy's vulnerabilities. However, during the war in the Persian Gulf, I became vulnerable as the lone person on the fantail of an enemy ship filled with a crew working for Saddam Hussein. On yet another occasion, despite being a master of cover and concealment, I lay naked on an aircraft runway in a third world country with bullet holes in both legs, the right leg nearly blown off by an AK-47 bullet. Sometimes we must face what we try to avoid. In the morning darkness of September 18th, 1993, in Mogadishu, Somalia, Casanova and I crept over the ledge of a retaining wall and climbed to the top of a 6-story tower. Even at this early hour, there were already people moving around. Men, women, and children relieved themselves in the streets. I smelled the morning fires being lit, fueled by dried animal dung and whatever else people could find to burn. The fires heated any food the Somalis had managed to obtain. Warlord Aidid knew fully the power of controlling the food supply. Every time I saw a starving child, I blamed Aidid for his evil power play that facilitated this devastation of life. The tower we were on was located in the middle of the Pakistani compound. The Pakistanis were professional and treated us with great respect. When it was tea time, the boy in charge of serving always brought us a cup. I had even developed a taste for the fresh goat milk they used in the tea. The sounds and scents of the goat herd in the compound reached my senses as Casanova and I crawled onto the outer lip at the top of the tower. There we lay, prone, watching a large garage, a vehicle body shop that had no roof. Surrounding the garage was a city of despair. Somalis trudged along with their heads and shoulders lowered. Helplessness dimmed their faces, and starvation pulled the skin tight across their bones. Because this was a better part of town, multi-level buildings stood in fairly good repair. There were concrete blockhouses instead of the tin and wooden lean-to sheds that dominated most of the city and countryside. Nevertheless, the smell of human waste and death mixed with hopelessness filled the air. Yes, hopelessness has a smell. People use the term developing countries, but that is bullcrap. What developed in Somalia was things such as hunger and fighting. I think developing countries is just a term used to make the people who coined it feel better. No matter what you call them, starvation and war are two of the worst events imaginable. I calculated the exact distances to certain buildings. There are two primary considerations when making a sniper shot: windage and elevation. Because there was no significant wind that could throw my shot left or right, I didn't have to compensate for it. Elevation is the variable considered for range or distance to the target. Since most of my potential targets were between 200 yards, garage, and 650 yards, intersection beyond the target garage, I dialed my scope in at 500 yards. This way I could just hold my rifle higher or lower depending on range. When the shooting began, there would be no time to dial in range corrections on my scope between shots. We started our surveillance at 0600. While we waited for our agent to give us the signal, I played different scenarios over in my mind. One enemy popping out at one location, then another popping up at another location, and so on. I would acquire, aim, and even do a simulated trigger pull, going through my rehearsed breathing and follow-through routine while picturing the actual engagement. Then I simulated reloading and getting back into my loopholed 10-power scope, continuing to scan for more booger eaters. I had done this dry firing and actual firing thousands of times. Wet, dry, muddy, snowbound, from a dug-in hole in the ground, from an urban sniper hide through a partially open window, and nearly every which way imaginable. The words they had drilled into our heads since we began SEAL training were true. The more you sweat in peacetime, the less you bleed in war. This particular day, I was charged with making sure none of my Delta Force buddies sprang a leak as I covered their insertion into the garage. My buddies not bleeding in war was every bit as important as my not bleeding. Our target for this mission was Osman Ali Atto, Warlord Aidid's main financier. Although Casanova and I would have been able to recognize the target from our previous surveillance, we were required to have confirmation of his identity from the CIA asset before we gave the launch command. The irony wasn't lost on me that we were capturing Atto instead of killing him, despite the fact that he and his boss had killed hundreds of thousands of Somalis. I felt that if we could kill Atto and Aidid, we could stop the fighting, get the food to the people quickly, and go home in one piece. It wasn't until around 0815 that our asset finally gave the predetermined signal. He was doing this because the CIA paid him well. I had learned firsthand while working with the CIA how payoffs could sway loyalty. When we saw the signal, Casanova and I launched the full package. Little Bird and Black Hawk helicopters filled the sky. During this time, the Delta operators literally had their butts hanging out. The urban environment provided too much cover, too much concealment, and too many escape routes for the enemy. All a hostile had to do was shoot a few rounds at a Hilo or Humvee, jump back inside a building, and put his weapon down. Even if he reappeared, he was not considered hostile without a weapon. Things happened fast, and the environment was unforgiving. Delta Force operators fast-roped down inside the garage. Rangers fast-roped around the garage, and Little Birds flew overhead with Delta snipers, giving the assault force protection. Otto's people scattered like rats. Soon, enemy militia appeared in the neighborhood, shooting up at the helicopters. Normally, snipers operate in a spotter-sniper relationship. The spotter identifies, ranges the targets, and relays them to the sniper for execution. There would be no time for that on this op. We were engaged in urban warfare. In this environment, an enemy could appear from anywhere. Even worse, the enemy dressed the same as a civilian. We had to wait and see his intention. Even if he appeared with a gun, there was a chance he was part of a clan on our side. We had to wait until the person pointed the weapon in the direction of our guys. Then we would ensure the enemy ceased to exist. There would be no time for makeup or second shots. Both Casanova and I wielded 300 Win Mag sniper rifles. Through my loopholed 10-power scope, I saw a militia man 500 yards away firing through an open window at the helos. I made a mental note to keep my heart rate down and centered the crosshairs on him as my muscle memory took over. Stock firmly into the shoulder, cheek position behind the scope, eye focused on the center of the crosshairs rather than the enemy, and steady trigger squeezing, even though it was only a light 2-pound pull. I felt the gratifying recoil of my rifle. The round hit him in the side of the chest, entering his left and exiting his right. He convulsed and buckled, falling backward into the building. Permanently. I quickly got back into my scope and scanned. Game on now. All other thoughts departed my mind. I was at one with my Win Mag, scanning my sector. Casanova scanned his sector too. Another militiaman carrying an AK-47 came out a fire escape door on the side of the building 300 yards away from me and aimed his rifle at the Delta operators assaulting the garage. From his position, I'm sure he thought he was safe from the assaulters, and he probably was. He was not safe from me. 300 yards wasn't even a challenge. I shot him through his left side and the round exited his right. He slumped down onto the fire escape landing, never knowing what hit him. His AK-47 lay silent next to him. Someone tried to reach out and retrieve the weapon. One round from my Win Mag put a stop to that. Each time I made a shot, I immediately forgot about that target and scanned for another. Chaos erupted inside and outside of the garage. People ran everywhere. Little birds and Black Hawks filled the sky with deafening rotor blasts. I was in my own little world, though. Nothing existed outside my scope and my mission. Let the unit guys handle their business in the garage. My business was reaching out and touching the enemy. This wasn't the first time I'd killed for my country. It wouldn't be the last. A few minutes passed as I continued scanning. More than 800 yards away, a guy popped up with an RPG launcher on his shoulder, preparing to fire at the helicopters. If I took him out, it would be the longest killing shot of my career. If I failed...
And that was Chapter 1 of SEAL Team 6 by Howard-Wasdin. Back in a minute. Thank you. I'm Ron, your host and the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all of the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. And until next time, be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.